Do you know what the most expensive thing in the world is? It's not a diamond, it's not a yacht, and it's certainly not some fancy piece of real estate in Malibu. It's stupidity. Stupidity is the only thing that will cost you everything you have and leave you with nothing but a headache and a court date in front of me. Every morning, I walk into this courtroom, I look at the files, and I pray, just for once, that I'll meet two adults who have a combined IQ higher than a toaster. But no, instead, I get people who treat $10,000 like it's a nickel they found in the couch cushions. They hand it over to friends, lovers, or second cousins twice removed without so much as a sticky note saying, "Pay me back." Then, when the relationship hits the rocks, they come crying to me, expecting me to be their private investigator, their mother, and their magician all at once. Well, newsflash, my name is Judge Judy, not fairy godmother. I don't have a magic wand, and I don't give a hoot about your feelings. I care about one thing and one thing only, the truth. And in a court of law, the truth is spelled E-V-I-D-E-N-C-E. Today's disaster waiting to happen was a woman named Miss Sharon Miller. She strode into the courtroom wearing a bright pink suit that screamed, "I'm the victim," clutching a designer handbag that probably cost more than her brain. She was suing her former best friend, a Miss Brenda Collins, for the jurisdictional limit of $10,000. $10,000. That's the big game in small claims. When someone sues for exactly $10,000, my baloney meter starts hitting the red zone before they even state their name. It usually means they've just added up every slight, every cup of coffee, and every hurt feeling since 1995 and decided to bill the defendant for the emotional trauma of being a loser. I looked over my glasses at Miss Miller. She was already hovering over the podium, adjusting her microphone with an air of immense self-importance. Across from her stood Miss Collins, who looked like she'd rather be getting a root canal without anesthesia. "Bird!" I called out. Bird, my bailiff, didn't even look up from his crossword puzzle. He's been with me long enough to know the drill. He just held out his hand. "Parties have been sworn in, Judge. Papers are on the bench." "Good," I snapped. I opened the file. "All right, Miss Miller, you're suing for $10,000. You say this is for unpaid loans and personal property. That's a lot of money to give a friend. Tell me, do you have a contract? Do you have a promissory note? Do you have anything written on the back of a napkin that says, 'I, Brenda, promise to pay Sharon back before the sun goes down'?" Miss Miller cleared her throat, tossing her hair back. "Well, Judge Judy, you see, we were like sisters. We've known each other for 15 years. I didn't think I needed a contract because—" "Stop right there!" I held up a hand. 15 years is a long time to be friends. It's also a long time to learn whether someone is a deadbeat or not. If I have a friend for 15 years and I'm going to hand them $10,000, which, by the way, I wouldn't do without a collateralized loan agreement signed in blood, I'm going to make sure there's a paper trail. So, I'm asking you again, where is the proof? She started fumbling through an accordion folder. "I have a list. I wrote down everything she owes me." "A list?" I leaned forward, my voice dropping to that dangerous register that usually makes smart people start sweating. "A list that you wrote? Is this a list of things you gave her or a list of things you lent her? Because there's a big difference, Sharon. One is a gift and the other is a legal obligation. If I give you a ham sandwich because you're hungry, I can't sue you for the ham 3 weeks later because we had a falling out. But it wasn't a sandwich, she chirped. It was for her rent. It was for her car repair. It was for a sofa." "Bird, bring me the list," I sighed. Bird ambled over, took a piece of notebook paper from Miss Miller, and brought it to me. I looked at it for exactly 3 seconds before I wanted to throw it back at her. It was handwritten in loopy cursive with little hearts over the eyes. $2,000. New tires, $800. $1,500. Miss expenses, $5,700. "Misk expenses?" I barked. $5,700 for Misk? What is Misk, Sharon? Did she buy a unicorn? Did you fund a secret mission to Mars? You don't get $5,000 for Misk in my courtroom. That was for when we went out, Sharon insisted. I paid for dinners. I paid for her drinks. I even paid for her dog's grooming because she said she was broke. I turned my gaze to the defendant, Miss Collins. She had been standing there with her arms crossed, looking remarkably bored. Miss Collins, I said, did she pay for your dog's haircut? She did, Judge, Brenda replied coolly, but I never asked her to. She used to say, "Oh, Brenda, you're struggling. Let me help you out. We're sisters." She was always throwing money around, trying to act like a big shot. I told her I didn't want it, but she insisted. Now that I've started dating her ex-boyfriend, suddenly all those favors have turned into loans. I felt a sharp pain behind my eyes. Of course. There it is, the ex-boyfriend factor. Ah! I slammed the file shut. So this isn't about the law. This is about, he's mine, not yours. You're using my courtroom as a weapon for your petty soap opera. You gave her money to look like the rich, generous friend, and now that she's stepped on your toes, you want a refund. No, that's not true, Sharon cried. The couch was definitely alone. I have a picture of the couch. I don't care if you have a 3D IMAX movie of the couch, I yelled. A picture of a couch is not a receipt. A picture of a couch doesn't tell me who paid for it, how much it cost, or what the repayment terms were. Do you have a canceled check? Do you have a bank statement showing a withdrawal of $1,500 on the day the couch was purchased? Do you have a text message from her saying, "Sharon, thanks for the couch loan. I'll pay you back $50 a month"? Sharon started digging through her folder again, her hands shaking. I have a text. Give it to Bird. I waited. Bird brought me her phone. I scrolled through a conversation that was 90% emojis and 10% gossip. Finally, I found it. Hey girl, hope you like the couch. It looks great in her place. Brenda Thicks, babe. Ooh, the best. Love oo. I handed the phone back to Bird. That's it? You're the best? That's your proof of a $1,500 loan? If someone gives me a couch and tells me I'm the best, I assume they're giving me a gift because I'm fabulous. I don't assume I'm entering into a high-interest credit agreement. But she knew, Sharon wailed. She knew nothing, I snapped. You know why? Because you said nothing. You wanted the love you wore, the best texts. You wanted the ego stroke of being the provider. Well, Sharon, the ego stroke cost you $10,000. Beauty fades, but dumb is forever. I turned back to the papers. I was looking for just one shred of actual physical evidence. A receipt from a store, a transfer on Venmo that said loan in the memo line, anything. Miss Miller, I'm looking at your evidence. You've given me a handwritten list, a photo of a piece of furniture, and a text message that sounds like it was written by a middle schooler. I'm going to ask you one last time, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Do you have a single receipt or a bank statement for any of these items? Sharon looked at the floor. Her pink suit didn't look so bright anymore. No, Judge Judy. I paid for everything in cash. I felt the blood pressure in my neck rise. Cash? You handed over $10,000 in cash, $10,000 in green paper, and you didn't get a single signature? You didn't get a receipt from the sofa store? You didn't get a work order for the tires? I lost them. You lost them. I nodded slowly. Of course you did. The dog ate the receipts. The wind blew them away. A giant bird swooped down and snatched them out of your hand. I looked at Brenda. She was smirking now. I don't like smirking defendants any more than I like unprepared plaintiffs. Don't get too comfortable, Miss Collins, I barked. Just because she's a fool doesn't mean you're a saint. But in this room, he said, she said, gets you exactly nowhere. If you come to court and you don't have your ducks in a row, you're going to get cooked. I turned back to Sharon. You're suing for $10,000. You have zero proof. You have zero receipts. You have zero common sense. Do you know what I have? She looked up, hopeful. Justice? No, I said, reaching for my gavel. I have a mortgage to pay and a lot of other cases to get to. Case dismissed. Bang. We're done here. Get out. Sharon stood there, her mouth hanging open like a broken mailbox. She actually had the nerve to look surprised. She looked at the gavel, then at me, then back at her empty folder. She probably thought if she stood there long enough, I'd change my mind out of some misplaced sense of fairness. Listen to me, and listen to me good. Fair is a place where they judge pigs and eat cotton candy. This is a court of law. But Judge, she started to wail, her voice hitting a frequency that could crack a windshield. That's $10,000. I worked hard for that money. She's just going to walk away with it? She's walking away with it because you handed it to her on a silver platter with a thank you note attached. I snapped. I didn't even look up from my desk as I began scribbling on the next file. You didn't lend her money, Sharon. You bought a friendship. And just like a cheap pair of shoes, it fell apart the minute you put some stress on it. Now move. Bird, get her out of here before I hold her in contempt for being a nuisance. Bird didn't have to say a word. He just stood up, all 6 foot something of him, and pointed toward the back of the room. Sharon gathered her pink blazer and her misc list and scurried out, sobbing about how unfair the world was. Brenda, on the other hand, sashayed out with a smirk that told me she'd be spending that loan money on a celebratory dinner tonight. I don't like Brenda. She's a grifter. She's the kind of person who sees a giving friend as an ATM that doesn't charge fees. But my personal opinion of her character doesn't pay the light bill. The law says the burden of proof is on the plaintiff. Sharon brought a feather to a knife fight. Case closed. I took a sip of my water and looked at the clock. It wasn't even 11 o'clock yet, and I was already exhausted by the sheer lack of basic survival instincts in the general population. Next, I called out. Bird called the names. Case 142, Henderson versus Rodriguez. Plaintiff is suing for $4,500 for unpaid rent and damages to a rental property. In walked Mr. Henderson, a man who looked like he'd spent the last 40 years sucking on a lemon. He was clutching a thick accordion folder, usually a good sign, but with my luck today, it was probably filled with grocery coupons. Behind him came Miss Rodriguez, a woman in her late 20s wearing enough eyeliner to paint a garage door. She was chewing gum. Spit it out? I barked before she even reached the podium. She blinked at me. What? The gum! Spit it out! This is a courtroom, not a baseball dugout. Bird, give her a tissue. She looked offended. They're always offended when you ask them to act like civilized adults. But she spat the gum into the tissue and stood there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was the one who owed her money. All right, Mr. Henderson, I said, leaning forward. You say, Miss, Rodriguez was your tenant for 18 months. You say she owes you 4 months of back rent, plus you're charging her for a ruined carpet and a broken window. Do you have a lease? I do, Your Honor, Henderson said. He fished out a document that looked like it had been through a war. It was stained with coffee and wrinkled, but it was a lease. He handed it to Bird. I looked it up. $1,200 a month. Security deposit of $1,000. Standard terms, fine. Now, you say she stopped paying in January. Why didn't you evict her then? She kept saying her grandmother was sick, then her car broke down, then her job cut her hours. Henderson sighed, looking at his shoes. I'm a softie, Judge. I believed her. A softie? I looked at him over my glasses. Mr. Henderson, if you want to be a charity, start a 501(c)(3). If you want to be a landlord, you need to grow a backbone. Being nice is just another way of saying, please take advantage of me. Now, Miss Rodriguez, he says you owe $4,800 in rent. Your defense says you paid him. Show me the receipts. Miss Rodriguez shifted her weight. I paid him in cash, Judge, every month. On the first, in cash? I felt that familiar twitch in my eyebrow. $4,800 in cash. And I assume you have the receipts signed by Mr. Henderson for every one of those payments? Well, no, she mumbled. He said he'd bring them the next day, but he never did. And we had an agreement. An agreement? I barked. What kind of agreement? A secret handshake? A telepathic bond? If I pay someone $1,200 in cash, I don't leave their presence until I have a piece of paper that says paid in full with a signature and a date. If they don't give it to me, I don't give them the money. It's not rocket science. It's a rent payment. But I have my bank statements, she shouted, reaching into her purse. See, I withdrew the money every month. Bird, bring me the statements. I looked at the papers. Okay. I see a withdrawal of $1,200 on January 3rd. I see another one on February 5th. Miss Rodriguez, this shows me you took money out of the bank. It does not show me that you put that money into Mr. Henderson's hand. For all I know, you took that $1,200 and went to the casino. You could have bought a very expensive collection of garden gnomes. It's not proof of payment. He's lying, she yelled, pointing a finger at the landlord. He's just trying to get double the money because he knows I'm moving out. Sir, I turned to Henderson. Did she pay you in January? No, Your Honor, not a dime. Did she pay you in February? No. Miss Rodriguez, I said, my voice getting quiet. Do you have a witness? Was there anyone there when you supposedly handed over this cash? My boyfriend was in the car. Is your boyfriend here? No, he's at work. Of course he is. He's always at work, or he's in the car, or he's in the shower. He's never in my courtroom where I can ask him why he watched you hand over thousands of dollars without asking for a receipt. I tossed her bank statements back onto the desk. Listen to me, and listen to me good. You're a grown woman. You live in the real world. In the real world, we use checks. We use money orders. We use Zelle. We use things that create a digital footprint, so people like me don't have to guess who's lying. I'm not lying, she cried. Then you're stupid, I yelled. And the law doesn't protect you from being stupid. If you pay in cash and don't get a receipt, you might as well have thrown the money into a bonfire. It didn't happen. As far as the law is concerned, that money never left your pocket. I turned back to Henderson. Now, let's talk about this carpet. You're asking for $700. How old was the carpet when she moved in? It was new, Your Honor. Installed it right before she signed the lease. Do you have the receipt for the installation? Yes, ma'am. He pulled out a neat printed receipt from a flooring company. I looked at it. Okay, Miss Rodriguez, he says the carpet is ruined. He says it smells like an animal shelter and has cigarette burns. I don't even smoke, she protested. Bird, show me the photos. Bird handed me a stack of Polaroids. I flipped through them, my face contorting in disgust. Miss Rodriguez, look at this. Is that a burn mark? It looks like you decided to use the living room floor as a hibachi grill. And what is this stain? It looks like a map of the Hawaiian Islands made out of grape juice. That was there when I moved in. She lied, smooth as silk. Mr. Henderson, do you have the move-in inspection report signed by the defendant? Right here, Judge. I looked at the report. There, in black and white, was Miss Rodriguez's signature under a section that said, carpet condition, excellent, new. I looked at her. She looked at the ceiling. You're a liar, Miss Rodriguez, I said, my voice flat. You lied about the carpet. You lied about the move-in condition. And since I know you're a liar about the carpet, I have absolutely no reason to believe a single word out of your mouth regarding the rent. You think because you're young and you have a loud voice, you can just steamroll over the truth? Quiet. I'm speaking. When I'm speaking, your mouth is shut. Do you understand? She nodded, her face turning a deep shade of red. You owe him for the rent, you owe him for the carpet, and you owe him for the window you broke. Mr. Henderson, what's the total? $4,500, plus the court costs, he said, his voice finally gaining a little strength. I'm giving him the full $4,500, I declared, plus interest from the date of the filing. And I'm keeping your security deposit to offset the damages. Miss Rodriguez, I suggest you start carrying a pen and a notebook. Every time you pay someone $1, you make them sign for it. Because if I see you back here again with a cash story, I'm going to personally escort you to the nearest mental health facility for an evaluation. Bang. Judgment for the plaintiff. Get out. Do I look like a bank? No. Seriously. Take a good look at me. Do I have a vault behind my chair? Is there a neon ATM sign flashing over my head? Because last I checked, banks have ledgers, security guards, and something called professional standards. They don't just hand out $10,000 because someone has a nice smile and a business plan scribbled on the back of a cocktail napkin. But here we go again. Case number 215, Miss Taylor Vance versus Mr. Marcus Thorne. Plaintiff is suing for the maximum $10,000. The reason? Investment in a joint business venture. I opened the file and felt a headache brewing behind my eyes. I could already smell the baloney from across the room. It smelled like expensive perfume and desperation. Taylor Vance walked in, looking like she was headed to a red carpet event instead of a small claims court. She had 4-inch heels, a designer suit that was probably 2 sizes too small, and she was carrying a tablet like it was the 10 Commandments. Marcus Thorne followed, looking like he'd just rolled out of a hammock linen shirt unbuttoned too far, loafers with no socks, and a tan that suggested he spent more time at the beach than at an office. "Bird," I called out. "Sworn in. Judge, papers are right there," Bird said, not looking up from his paper. He knew this was going to be a long one. "All right, Miss Vance," I said, leaning over the bench. "You're suing Mr. Thorne for $10,000. You say you invested this money into an online boutique called Vibe and Virtue. Tell me, what is Vibe and Virtue besides a terrible name for a store?" Taylor straightened her back and tapped her tablet. "Your Honor, it was meant to be a curated lifestyle brand. Marcus was the creative lead, and I was the financial engine. I gave him $10,000 to secure the first round of inventory from overseas." "Creative lead?" I scoffed. "In my day, we called that a salesman. And financial engine is just a fancy way of saying sucker. Now, let's get to the meat of the matter. Do you have a partnership agreement? Do you have an LLC filing? Do you have a contract that says if the business fails, he owes you your investment back?" Taylor blinked. "Well, we were dating at the time, Judge Judy. We had a verbal understanding." "A verbal understanding," I threw my hands up. "A verbal understanding is what I have with my dog about not barking at the mailman. It's not a legal basis for a $10,000 claim." "Miss Vance, you're an entrepreneur, right? That's what it says on your social media profile?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then you should know the first rule of business. If it isn't in writing, it doesn't exist. Did you give him a check? A wire transfer? How did the financial engine deliver the fuel?" "I gave him cash," she whispered. I stared at her. The silence in the courtroom was so heavy you could have used it as an anchor. I slowly took off my glasses and rubbed the bridge of my nose. "Cash," I repeated. $10,000. In cash. He said he needed to pay the suppliers in Los Angeles immediately, and they gave a discount for cash, she explained, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "Mr. Thorne," I turned to the creative lead. "Did she give you $10,000 in cash?" Marcus leaned on the podium, looking entirely too relaxed. "She gave me some money, Judge, but it wasn't 10 grand. It was maybe 3, and it wasn't an investment. It was a gift because she wanted to help me get back on my feet after my last project folded." "He's lying," Taylor shrieked. "I have photos of us at the bank." "Bird, get the photos," I sighed. Bird brought me the photos. It was a selfie, Taylor and Marcus in front of a bank branch, both of them smiling and holding a coffee cup. There was no money in the photo. There was no receipt. Just 2 people who looked like they were having a lovely Tuesday. "Miss Vance," I said, holding up the photo. "What is this?" "This is a picture of 2 people who need to find a better hobby. This is not proof of a $10,000 cash handoff. I can stand in front of a Ferrari and take a picture. Doesn't mean I own the car. But look at the date," she insisted. "That was the day I withdrew the money." "I don't care if you withdrew $1 million that day," I yelled. "Show me where you gave it to him. Show me a receipt. Show me an invoice from these suppliers in Los Angeles. Show me a text message where he says, 'Hey, Taylor, thanks for the $10,000 in cash for the business.'" She started swiping frantically on her tablet. I have DMs. Here. I looked at the messages. Bird brought me, babe, the vision is so close. We're going to kill it. I'm so excited to be your partner. Let's build this empire. Marcus. I handed the tablet back. Fire and rockets? That's your evidence? Rockets? This isn't NASA, Miss Vance. This is a courtroom. The vision is so close is not a promissory note. Let's build this empire is what people say before they lose their shirts in a pyramid scheme. He spent it on himself, Taylor cried. 2 weeks after I gave him the money, he bought a new jet ski. I have a picture of him on the jet ski. Mr. Thorne, I barked. Did you buy a jet ski? I did, Judge, but I bought it with my own money. My aunt gave me an inheritance. Do you have proof of the inheritance? Not with me. Of course not. I turned back to Taylor. Now, listen to me. I suspect he's a scoundrel. I suspect he took your money and literally rode it into the sunset on a Yamaha Wave Runner. But guess what? Suspecting isn't deciding. I can suspect the moon is made of green cheese, but I can't rule on it without a sample. But I'm out $10,000. You're out $10,000 because you were foolish. I stood up, my robe billowing. You broke the cardinal rule of life. Never lend money you can't afford to lose, and never lend a dime without a signature. You wanted to be a financial engine? Well, the engine stalled because you didn't check the oil. You have no receipts. You have no contract. You have no case. Judge, please. No. I don't want to hear another word. You're dismissed. And Mr. Thorne, get that smirk off your face. You're not clever. You're just lucky she's disorganized. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Bang. Case dismissed. Bird, tell the next group to bring their brains with them. I'm running low on patience. I sat back down, my heart hammering a bit. It's the same story every time. People think that because they had a vibe with someone, the law doesn't apply. They think their feelings are a substitute for a paper trail. $10,000. Gone. Not because of a robbery, not because of a fire, but because of a selfie and a fire emoji. If you're watching this at home, let me tell you something. If you love someone, give them a hug. If you want to give them $10,000, give them a contract. If they won't sign it, keep your money and find a new person to hug. It'll save you a trip to see me, and it'll save me from having to explain the basics of civilization to grown adults. Next case, I yelled. And Bird, if this one mentions cash or DMs, I'm going to need a double espresso. Do you know what the definition of a gift is? It's something you give with no expectation of getting it back. It's a one-way street. A loan, on the other hand, is a two-way street with a toll booth at the end. And yet people come in here every day trying to turn a dead-end street into a highway after the car is already crashed. They give money away when things are love and roses, and then the minute the roses wilt and the love turns into a lawsuit, they expect me to go back in time and draft a contract for them. I don't have a time machine. I have a bench and a brain. Case number 302, Mrs. Beatrice Gable versus Chloe Gable, mother suing daughter. This is always my favorite part of the day, watching a family tree set itself on fire over a pile of cash. The claim? $10,000. Again, that magic number, it's like everyone thinks that if they hit the $10,000 mark, it automatically becomes serious business, even if they handle the transaction like a lemonade stand. Mrs. Gable walked in looking like she'd just come from a church social floral dress, sensible pearls, and a handkerchief clutched in her hand like it was a life preserver. Chloe, the daughter, looked like she'd just come from a spiritual retreat in the desert, oversized knit sweater, turquoise jewelry up to her elbows, and an expression of enlightened boredom that I wanted to slap right off her face. Bird, I called. Sworn in, Judge. Papers are right here. It's a family affair, Bird said, not even looking up from his crossword. I think he was on a 1-2-letter word for disaster. All right, Mrs. Gable, I said, leaning forward. You're suing your daughter for $10,000. You say this was a loan for her wedding, but I look at the file and I don't see a wedding announcement. I don't see a picture of a cake. I don't even see a groom. What happened? Beatrice sniffed into her handkerchief. Your Honor, Chloe was engaged to a lovely young man, a doctor. I wanted her to have the wedding of her dreams. I gave her $10,000 for the deposit on the venue and the dress. But then, 2 months later, she called it off. She said she wasn't feeling the vibration anymore. Not feeling the vibration? I looked at Chloe. Is that a medical condition, Chloe? Did you have a low battery? Or did you just decide that being married to a doctor was too much stability for your free spirit? Chloe rolled her eyes, her turquoise bracelets clattering. Judge Judy, it's not about the doctor. It's about my journey. I realized I wasn't ready to be tethered to one reality. And the money wasn't alone. My mother told me, Chloe, I want you to have this money to start your new life. Those were her exact words. Start your new life? I repeated. I turned to Beatrice. Did you say those words, Mrs. Gable? I meant her life as a married woman, Beatrice cried. I gave her the money specifically for the wedding. When the wedding didn't happen, I expected the money back. But she didn't give it back. She spent it. Spent it on what? I asked. Did you buy a new reality, Chloe? Or did you just go shopping? I went to Bali, Chloe said, as if she were announcing she joined the Peace Corps. I needed to heal. I used the money to fund a 3-month intensive soul-searching retreat. It was transformative. Transformative? I barked. I'll tell you what's transformative. A $10,000 judgment. That'll transform your bank account into a zero real fast. You took your mother's wedding money and went to Bali to find yourself? Did you find yourself because I found you right here and you look like a thief? It was a gift, Chloe insisted. She didn't ask for a receipt. She didn't ask me to sign anything. Mrs. Gable, I said, ignoring the soul searcher. Do you have a letter, an email? A text message from before you gave her the money that says, Chloe, I am lending you this $10,000 for the wedding, and if the wedding is canceled, I want every penny back? Beatrice looked down at her pearls. No, Your Honor. She's my daughter. I trusted her. Trust is for Sundays, I yelled. Monday through Saturday, you get it in writing, especially with this one. She's talking about vibrations and journeys. That's code for, I'm going to spend your money on a beach and pretend it's a religious experience. But I have the check, Beatrice said, pulling a slip of paper from her purse. I wrote wedding in the memo line. Bird, bring me the check. I looked at it. It was a personal check for $10,000. In the memo line, in neat grandmotherly handwriting, was the word wedding. I looked at Chloe. Do you see this, Chloe? It says wedding. It doesn't say Bali. It doesn't say find my soul. It says wedding. If I give you money for a car and you buy a boat, you've breached the agreement. A memo line isn't a contract, Chloe said, her voice dripping with smugness. My lawyer friend told me that a memo line is just for personal records. It doesn't prove it was a loan. She didn't say I had to pay it back. She just gave it to me. I felt my teeth grit. She was right. Legally, she was right, and I hated her for it. A memo line on a check is not a promissory note. Without a written agreement stating the terms of repayment or the conditions under which the money must be returned, a transfer of funds between a parent and a child is almost always presumed to be a gift. Your lawyer friend is a schmuck, I said, tossing the check back onto the bench. But unfortunately, he's a schmuck who knows the letter of the law. Mrs. Gable, I want to help you. I really do. I think what your daughter did is reprehensible. I think she's selfish, entitled, and has the moral compass of a weather vane in a hurricane. So you're giving me my money back? Beatrice asked, her eyes lighting up. I can't! I slammed my hand on the desk. I don't have the evidence. You gave your daughter a $10,000 gift with a suggestion on the memo line. A suggestion is not a mandate. You didn't protect yourself. You didn't treat this like a business transaction, and now you're paying the mom tax. The cost of your daughter's Bali trip is your $10,000. But Judge Judy, no buts. I turned to Chloe. You think you're so enlightened? You think you're so healed? You just sued your own mother's love and won on a technicality? You're going to walk out of here with $10,000 of her hard-earned money, and you're going to lose a mother. I hope the vibrations in Bali were worth it, because you're bankrupt in every way that actually matters. I picked up my gavel. I didn't even want to look at them anymore. This was the third case in a row where a total lack of paperwork had turned a clear moral wrong into a legal dead end. Case dismissed, I screamed. Get out of my sight, both of you. And Mrs. Gable, the next time you want to give her money, buy her a book on ethics instead. It's cheaper. Bang. I sat back, breathing hard. My blood was boiling. Bird, I'm serious. If the next person who walks through those doors doesn't have a receipt, I'm going to go out there and buy a stapler and staple their hands together so they can't give any more money away. Next case is a contractor dispute, Judge Bird said calmly. Should be lots of papers. There better be, I muttered, or someone's going to Bali on a one-way ticket to jail. Contractors. If I had a nickel for every time a contractor walked into this room with a pencil behind his ear and a pack of lies in his pocket, I'd be retired on a private island with a staff that actually knows how to follow instructions. And if I had a dime for every homeowner who handed over their life savings to a man they found on a telephone pole flyer without asking for a license, I'd own the island next to it. But here we are. The grand finale of the I'm Too Trusting for My Own Good show. Case number 412, Miss Penelope Pringle versus Mr. Big Al Miller. Plaintiff is suing for, you guessed it, $10,000. For a dream kitchen that turned into a nightmare of sawdust and sadness, Miss Pringle walked in, clutching a floral handkerchief, her eyes already brimming with tears. She looked like the kind of woman who knits sweaters for her cats and believes everything she reads on the internet. Big Al, on the other hand, looked like he just stepped out of a grease pit. He had a flannel shirt with the sleeves ripped off, boots that were caked in mud, and a grin that suggested he'd never met a problem he couldn't fix with a roll of duct tape and a shrug. Bird, I called out. Sworn in, Judge. Papers are sparse, Bird said, leaning back. Spare me the suspense, I said, opening the file. All right, Miss Pringle. You say you hired Big Al here to remodel your kitchen. You say you gave him $10,000 to buy Italian marble and professional-grade appliances. And you say all you have to show for it is a hole in your floor and a refrigerator that's currently living on your front porch. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Penelope wailed. He told me he needed the money up front to lock in the prices because of the global supply chain crisis. He said if I didn't pay him that day, the marble would go to a villa in Malibu. A villa in Malibu? I looked at Al. Is that right, Al? Are you the gatekeeper of the Italian marble trade? Do you have a direct line to the quarries in Carrara from your truck? Al scratched his head. Look, Judge, I told her prices were going up. I took the money to secure the materials. But then my transmission went out, and my helper got the flu, and then there was a localized lumber shortage. A localized lumber shortage? I barked. What happened? Did a beaver move into your backyard and eat all the 2X, 4S? Don't give me that baloney. Where is the marble? Where is the stove? Where is the $10,000? I spent some of it on mobilization costs, Al said, leaning on the podium like he was at a bar. Mobilization costs? I slammed my hand down. You're a handyman, not the 101st Airborne. You don't get $10,000 for mobilizing. Now, Miss Pringle, give me the contract. Show me the itemized list of materials. Show me the timeline for completion. Penelope started shaking. We didn't have a formal contract, Judge Judy. He wrote the estimate on a piece of drywall. On a piece of drywall? I stared at her. You handed $10,000 to a man based on a sketch on a piece of construction debris? Did you keep the drywall, Penelope? Is it entered into evidence? Or did he take it with him to mobilize it? He took it, she whispered. But I have the canceled checks. I have 3 checks for $3,000, $3,000, and $4,000. Bird, get the checks. I looked at them. They were made out to Big Al, not a company, not an LLC, just a guy named Al. In the memo line of the first check, it said kitchen. The second said kitchen. The third was blank. Al, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. Did you buy the marble? Not yet, Judge. I was waiting for the market to stabilize. The market to stabilize? I leaned over the bench. The only thing that's going to stabilize is you in a jail cell. If you don't start telling me the truth, you took this woman's money, you spent it on your transmission and your mobilization, and you haven't bought a single bag of grout. You're a thief with a tool belt. I ain't a thief, Al shouted. I did the demolition. I tore out her old cabinets. Oh, bravo, I shouted back. You destroyed a perfectly functional kitchen and left her with a hole in the floor. That's not work, Al. That's vandalism. Anyone with a sledgehammer and a bad attitude can do demolition. A contractor builds things. Now, Miss Pringle, did you get a receipt for the $10,000? He said the canceled checks were my receipts, she sobbed. The checks prove you gave him money. They don't prove what the money was for. They don't prove the scope of the work. They don't prove the brand of the appliances. I turned back to the file. I was looking for anything, a text, an email, a photo of a showroom, nothing. Miss Pringle, look at me. You are a grown woman. You own a home. You have managed to survive this long in a world filled with sharks. Why, in the name of all that is holy, would you give $10,000 to a man without a license, without a contract, and without a receipt? He was so nice, she cried. He helped my neighbor with her leaky faucet. A leaky faucet is a 10-minute fix? A kitchen remodel is a major life event? You don't marry a man because he opened a door for you once, and you don't give $10,000 to a guy because he's nice. I looked at Big Al. He was looking at his fingernails. He knew that without a contract, I was in a legal bind. I could order him to pay it back, but he didn't have the money. He'd spent it. And without a receipt showing exactly what was owed for what. The damages were a muddy mess of he said, she said. Listen to me, I said, pointing my finger at both of them. I am going to do something I rarely do. I am going to give you a judgment, Miss Pringle, but it's going to be a hollow victory. I'm awarding you the $10,000 because Al here admitted he took the money and didn't buy the materials. That's a conversion of funds. But Al, if you don't have the money, she's got a piece of paper that's worth as much as your drywall contract. I turned to the gallery. This is a lesson for every single one of you. If you're doing business, whether it's with your mother, your boyfriend, or a guy named Big Al, you get it in writing. You get a receipt. You use a credit card so you can dispute the charge. If you use cash and trust, you are going to end up like Miss Pringle sitting in a room with a hole in your floor and a judge who is tired of telling you, I told you so. I looked at Al. You're a disgrace to the trades, Al. Get out of here. And Miss Pringle, I hope you like takeout, because it's going to be a long time before you're cooking in that Italian marble kitchen. I slammed the gavel down one last time. The sound echoed through the courtroom, a final, sharp punctuation mark on a day filled with expensive mistakes and zero paperwork. We're done for the day, Bird. Take me home before I find out someone else lent their life savings to a spiritual life coach for a manifestation seminar. I stood up, my robe billowing, and walked off the bench. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The truth was left on the floor, right next to the floral handkerchief and the misc list. In my world, the law is simple. No receipts, no case. And if you can't remember that, you'd better start saving up, because stupid is the most expensive hobby you'll ever have.